is we're live. Hi everyone. Okay, there's about 13 people in here. Hi Piccia. Oh, hi, Emily's in the chat. If you're in the chat, let us know. And
Hi, Emily.
am confirming that we are live on Facebook.
Hi, Brian. Hi, Emily. It's so great to be here. Thank you so much for having me while Joanne is checking on Facebook. Can I just ask you something? Great to see you, Emily, as well. Can you just tell me, I see my light is kind of sort of vibrating. Is it being a bit funny or does it look all right? Does it look fine? Is it just on my end, maybe? So live on Facebook is working. I mean, do you see me all right? I'll be really small anyway, so I don't suppose it matters.
Let me just confirm it's both
you
of
can
us
see that,
and not
Brian.
just me.
Yeah. You can see that. Not problematic. Okay, so let's leave it because we're just only big now that we're going to be really small. So I won't, I won't worry about it right now. Unless someone finds it really annoying.
Okay, the Facebook stream is working. I'm just confirming, and I had a huge double feed, but all is good. All right, everyone.
Yeah, that happens on Facebook. That does happen on Facebook. Yeah, it's quite difficult to negotiate. Yeah.
Yeah, well, welcome, Piccia. It's so good to have you over here on our GoWP webinar. We're so excited to get started with this design for conversions and how to become more profitable by putting people first with Piccia Neri. And really quick, I just want to get started with a few words about GoWP in case anyone watching isn't familiar with us. So at GoWP, we create happiness for digital agencies and help them to become more profitable. Whether you're looking to grow your team with a developer, a copywriter, a designer, or a project manager, or you're interested in outsourcing services so you can focus on growth, we got you covered. So we've also built an active community of more than 1,600 agency owners where we hold regular group calls, webinars like this one, and mastermind sessions. And you can grow your agency with GoWP, essentially. So we're committed to helping agencies grow through the resources we provide in this community, like this webinar with Piccia. And you can join that community if you haven't already with on Facebook. So I'll go ahead and send that real quick on the chat. That's the link to our niche agency owners community. And if you have any questions about partnering with GoWP and how you can help your agency grow, feel free to reach out. So yeah, if you haven't joined yet, go ahead and join with the link in the chat. And a few notes regarding the webinar. So I will be watching the chat and I'll be listening as well. So if you have any questions, just throw them in the chat. There's a little ask a question prompt toggle. So you can ask whatever questions related to the webinar you have, and I'll get them to Piccia. So let's do, we already did a quick chat test. Everyone is engaged. We said hello, our hellos. So yeah, let's get started with why we're here today. So Piccia Neri is an Italian-born Londoner in Valencia, in Spain. She's also a US expert and a global speaker. She helps businesses and agencies win on the web by putting users at the center. She is also a UX design project lead on international projects and a Maverick at Cloudways, a cloud hosting platform. She helps businesses and agencies win on the web by putting humans at the center. And that's what she's here to discuss today. So I'm really looking forward to this. I'm really looking forward to see, well, I hope everyone is, to see how we can put humans centered in the narrative of design. Especially like even today, like when we were setting everything up in the green room, I suddenly realized how on topic everything was, because I thought it's things are not as intuitive as you hope them to be, right?
Yeah, there's always, I mean, I know that because I give so many online talks that there's always an issue. If I want to see the full screen presentation, there are a few hacks, but it doesn't, you need to, know how it works, and it doesn't quite work the same for every platform, but we got there. So that's all right. But just to tell you, so when during the presentation, I welcome questions, no problem at all. But what will happen, I mean, during the presentation, some of them, if you want to ask at the end, that's fine. But usually I really like the interaction with people. However, because of the way I'm going to run the presentation on my screen, I won't be able to see you. You'll see me, but I won't see you. So Joanne will talk to me. If there's anything that you want to ask, then Joanne, you feel free to interrupt, like we said, and you can ask me. But if you would rather the question get answered at the end, you can do that. You can just say that. And actually, this design for convergence thing by putting people first is much simpler than you think. I think that you'll find that a lot of it is actually common sense.
Wow. I think. Okay, awesome. So let's get started. I am going to go ahead and mute myself, and take it away, Piccia.
Great. So I'm going to share my screen first. So that window, is it? I never know if it's screen 1 or screen 2. Well, I guess we'll know. No, that's not the one. Screen 2 is what I want. There you go. Allow and play. Here we are. So I guess if something goes wrong, if anything goes wrong, because I can't see what's going on, then Joanne, you let me know.
It looks great. Looks great. Let's go.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. So again, as we said, designed for conversions, how to be more profitable by putting people first. Let's start with this. This is one of my favorite examples when I want to explain what bad user experience means. I mean, this sucks, doesn't it? It sucks so much. It makes me think that whoever designed this cycling path did it on purpose. This is actually in where I live, here in Valencia in Spain. But notice also, if you're a cyclist, these tiled parts are really uncomfortable to ride and very slippery when it gets wet. So no fun at all. And I think that it's obviously this user is having a crappy experience, and it's that easy to identify with someone who is trying to get somewhere and suddenly they have a wall blocking their way. So they want to get somewhere. They thought they could get somewhere when they started the journey, but as it turns out, they can't. But it seems comical, but really we've wasted our time and then definitely never coming back. Now, if you compare with this user is having a great experience because they know exactly where to go, what to do, what to expect. They have options, they have agency, and they have clarity. So given the choice, wouldn't you go on this second path? Well, yeah, I would say so. So exactly the same thing happens on the web. A crap experience will send your users away, inevitably expressing immediate exit intent for, however many pop-ups you put there. So the kind of experience that human beings that land on your page have will make them either come back or never return. Now, this is an extreme example that I'm putting here for giggles because it's a self-proclaimed world's worst website ever, and it's just for fun, just to show. I mean, it's remindful of various GeoCities and 90s sites, and it's not there to do anything other than make us laugh a little bit at all the crimes against design that it's making. On the other hand, this is an actual real site, and it's one that I find always really interesting. It's a wiki site, so Yale School of Art students collaborate to this, but it has so many things wrong with it. I kind of like the vintage, internet vintage side to it, but it has various things that are basically not accessible and not usable, so not a good idea. This is another one that's quite bad, isn't it? I mean, what does it even do? I'm not sure what I'm here for. I have to work quite a lot to understand even what this is about. It tells me what it's not. It does not manufacture cellular mobile telephones or optical devices, but it doesn't, I'm not quite sure what it does. So it's lack of clarity, lack of usability, lack of accessibility, especially in the colors and in the typeface alignment and things like that. And therefore lack of trust, because it's like, who is this person? Why should I believe them? I don't trust this at all. And this shows a lack of care for the user. And I understand this is a little bit of an extreme example, but that's what we're here for. So when you have lack of clarity, lack of usability, lack of accessibility, lack of trust, lack of care for the user, and actually there are a lot of modern, fantastic looking websites that have all this. Basically, it's a lack of real design and lack of good UX. What's the answer to all this? Well, design is the answer. And I want to tell you a real life story, which is the Airbnb story, or AKA how a startup went stratospheric by putting people first. How did they do that? So this screenshot is from the Wayback Machine, the Web Archive machine, wonderful tool. And it's from 2009, more or less, which is when the company was really young, but it was already growing. I mean, they had nearly 2,000 listings in New York. So what they used to do, the two friends that started Airbnb up, they used to travel around the US, staying exclusively with Airbnb hosts in order to find about the service about on the ground and truly empathize with both hosts and guests, because there are two sides to the Airbnb story: the people who make their houses available and the people who use the houses. So over time, the company adopted many really daring and interesting marketing strategies in order to grow. But the most famous, and also the earliest, as far as I know, Airbnb UX story is this one. They were concerned particularly about the lack of growth in New York, because they thought New York hotels are ridiculously expensive. It should be a place where it's dead easy to sell Airbnb, but it wasn't growing. So they went on the ground again. Yes.
Yeah, sorry for interrupting you. Hate to interrupt you. There's some kind of feedback on your mic right now. I'm not sure what it is. Yeah. It just started in the past when you started talking about the Airbnb case study, which is one of my favorite case studies. Can you
what if I speak slower? If closer to the mic, does it help?
It's just when you're speaking. I don't. For some reason, it's.
To be honest, this happens usually with Crowdcastles or StreamYard. It never happens with anything else. I wonder if it's maybe I should try a different browser. I mean, I know I would be interrupting, but I'm wondering whether it's a browser. I'm using Firefox.
Yeah,
let's trying
do
again?
That. Yeah, definitely. Let's do that. Okay, yeah, it's because everyone is it's happening for everyone in the chat. Let's do that. Yeah, could you do a quick browser change?
Sorry, Pete.
It's totally.
That's really weird because it never happens. Let me turn my phone off just to be on the safe side. But it's always never happens. So phone is off. Headphones should noise. It's just weird that it's happening. But let me try. I'll leave. What should I do? Should I leave here? How does it work?
I'll invite you back in.
Okay, so options. It doesn't make it clear at all.
Do you have another mic?
Get out. How do I get out?
You just close the browser.
Close the window. Okay.
Yep.
Bye.
We'll see you in just a second. Cool. All right. Well, in the meantime, while we wait for Piccia to come back, if anyone has any other UX use case studies that they would like to share in the chat, I'm not a UX expert, but I'd happily talk about it quickly. You know what? Maybe David, that is so true. The UX, it's a special flavor of irony. Yeah, I feel like Crowdcast is a very interesting tool for everyone. How about we bring Emily on screen so we can maybe have a conversation in the meantime? What do you think, Emily? Do you want to come on screen? Would you be keen for that in the meantime? Awesome. Oh, clicked on your account. Alrighty then. So in the meantime, we'll have a two-person show while we test. Well, Piccia comes back. Hey, Emily, you're on screen.
Hello, can you see me?
I can't, not yet.
Myself either.
I can hear you.
Well, I'm here. I don't see an option to add video. This is interesting that it's all happening on a UX.
I know. I know, right? It's interesting. It's fun. It's also another way to show that we're always learning, right? Okay, I think that Piccia's back. Piccia, I'm invited you on screen. Emily, thanks for joining us. So she should be joining us on screen. And okay, there she is. She's accepted and connecting. I was just gonna say maybe I should try some of my stand-up jokes, but this is not the time for that. Hey,
Sorry, peeps.
all good, and the feedback is gone.
Great. Actually, I'm hearing myself again. Hang on. It's because I've got. Okay, yeah, fine.
Awesome. It sounds
great.
perfect.
Yeah, David is saying, wasn't a dig, that UX speaker not being able to find out how to live is a special flavor of irony, and I completely agree. Mm-hmm. Also, because it would be nice if they told you, really use Chrome, don't use anything else, because, anyway, sorry, peeps, I'm back. So let's go back to the Airbnb. Thank you for your patience, everyone. But that's what UX is about. You get it wrong, and then you get it better next time. So let's go back to it. I'll share my screen again, if I can find where the share screen was. Where is it? Oh, it only appears if I click on the window, then it appears. Which again, no. They should do progressive disclosure. It would be much better if there's something that tells me that. Anyway, there you go. Sharing screen 2 and play. Here we go. Okay, so we're back in time. As we were saying, we're back in time in 2009, and we're in New York. They had about 2,000 listings. It wasn't growing. People weren't using it as much as they should have done, because New York, ridiculously expensive. Something like Airbnb should have been super successful. So they went there, and they went on the ground to speak to the hosts and the guests, and they realized that what the hosts were doing was they were taking photos with that crappy. I mean, in 2009, we didn't have the camera phones that we have now. The cameras on our phones were not great. So, the photos were really bad, because not all of us, even with not all of us know about how to take a great photo, especially of an interior. So potential guests were terribly put off by the low quality of the images, which didn't inspire confidence. This is another one. So it's a completely new concept. You're going into somebody's home. It was weird when it came out, and people didn't want to find themselves in rat-infested hellholes with horrible hosts. So what the owners did was they went to New York, they bought professional photographic equipment, hired photographers, and started taking proper photos of their New York listings. And here's a graph of the growth of Airbnb. So 2008, 2009, and 2010, still a bit iffy, and then there's a huge climb. There's a real spike, and it happens more or less at the time when they hire photographers. That's when a spike in revenue took place. It wasn't cheap when they did it, but they realized it was the only way. They could barely afford it, but the strategy paid off big time. They invested in quality because quality is what gives confidence to buyers. One of the things, but it's what gives confidence to buyers. And this is something that we should remind our clients of as often as we can. So soon they hired more photographers and expanded the service way beyond New York to the rest of the world. And they continued to grow exponentially. And as they say, the rest is history. And Airbnb themselves are the first to attribute that pivot from possible failure, because the possibility did exist, to a global miracle thanks to the photography episode. And I also want to say that I was on the receiving end of this, because around 2012, actually the summer of the London Olympics, I started renting out my spare room in my flat. I lived in London at the time, to Airbnb, and they sent me a photographer. And the clever thing at that point was that the photographer had two purposes: taking the photos, but also it was a quality check. It was a check that who I said I was, that this was a real, kosher, proper place that I was renting out. So I wish they were still doing it. They're not quite doing it anymore. But look at this. I mean, all these places look amazing. But I can guarantee you that even if they are great, without the professional photographer, they wouldn't look as good. That's for sure. So this is the big UX lesson. Airbnb went stratospheric as a result of putting themselves in the shoes of the human beings needing and or using their service. Now, there's lots more to say about what Airbnb did to the world at large. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. But the important thing is there's also another essential fact that they hit their nail on the head with. Well, you need a good product that your audience needs and wants. And Airbnb did have a product that their audience really wanted. And they knew that because they asked the audience, and because they were their own audience. They had the idea for the service when they started renting out their own home, and when they noticed that when they were going out to conferences around the US, they had this big money problem because they were young people without access to huge finances, and this kind of service was already available unofficially on the American listing sites, but it wasn't working as well. So they knew the market was ripe for Airbnb, or Airbed and Breakfast, because it was Airbeds. But the really important thing is that they made their product better by putting people first. This is what they did. So you need to treat your users well and make them happy. And you can do that when you deliberately lead UX. Could you swear that you already do that? I try and do it, and I'm not sure I always manage, and I'm not sure I always do it. So that's why I'm telling everybody that we should do it, because the important thing to bear in mind is that users are humans, and it's essential. This sort of slight shift when we use a different word is what makes us think about them as people rather than data. So how do you do that? How do you make your users happy, and how do you put them first? Well, you center the whole process around them. When you design putting the humans that use your products at the center of the process, you are much more likely to treat them well. And that's something that also increases your own value in a myriad ways, which is what happened with Airbnb. And it's something that the first cycling path that we saw definitely didn't do. So how do you do this? Well, there's a thing called human-centered design that is at the basis of the UX process. And that is, simply is what it does. It's what it puts people first. We'll see a few ways in which that you can do that. And a bit of a definition of human-centered design is when you put the human perspective at the center of the problem solving and production processes. And there is a lot more to say about the human-centered design process, and I have a program that goes much more into detail about that. But for now, let's just say this. Let's just say that you design for real people. You develop solutions for real people. And those people that you devise the solutions for matter more than anything else. If you think that this is too abstract, think about the Airbnb user case. How many clients do you know that actually go and ask their actual real life users? There seems to be a real reluctance to do this, and it's the one thing that you should do. It's almost as if people are afraid of feedback, but you shouldn't be afraid of feedback. Feedback is essential. So you need to ask the real people. And again, as I was saying just a moment ago, if you think of humans rather than users, you will be better able to find solutions for them. So design for humans, because you will design considering flaws, distractions, human errors, context, emotions, rather than a, supposedly perfect brochure site that actually doesn't help anyone. And the reward to all of this is better UX for everyone. You will be able to design better UX. One thing to bear in mind is that it's not about you and it's not about your clients either. And that's something that happens all the time, because good UX means providing the experience that humans truly want rather than the one that you want them to have or that you think that they should be having. And we're often very guilty of this because we're so often fixated on what we want the users to do because we think we know what's best for them, that we forget to listen. And actually, as agencies, we do that with our clients as well. How many times, I mean, I'm talking for myself, but it's something that I observe happening a lot, that you give a client a solution, but you haven't actually listened to them as much as you could have because you think, oh, I know better than you. So if you actually adopt this mindset, because user-centered design really is a mindset, and these processes, that means that you'll end up listening to your clients a lot more than you already do, because human-centered design is about listening, and you need to learn to be a good listener. And in fact, I'd like to make another extremely important point, is that good business is also about listening. If you start listening to your clients, that's when you're going to see your business thrive. Because Airbnb asked their users to air their grievances and they listened to them and took action. They didn't take umbrage at the fact that they didn't like the website. They made it better. So look where they are now. Use this simple superpower and you will see your business thrive. And if you are thinking now, how do I do that? How? I can't hear you ask and I can't see you ask, but I imagine that you are asking yourself now. Well, there is indeed a crucial ingredient. And that crucial ingredient is empathy. Putting yourself in your user's shoes, reminding ourselves that users are really people looking for a solution to their problems and not just a number in our Google Analytics stats. So empathy is the secret sauce, the secret crucial ingredient. Let's have a look at the dictionary definition of empathy. And I think it's important to remind ourselves, empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. But there is another emotion that's similar to empathy and that people often mistake for empathy, and it's sympathy, which is feelings of pity and sorrow for someone else's misfortune. However, do you think they're the same? I kind of wish I could see your reactions. I quite like always interacting. I can't, never mind. So are they the same? Well, not really. I mean, sympathy, again, it's an understanding between people. It's a common feeling. There are words, for instance, in Italian that make you understand that. But it only gets so far. It acknowledges, but it doesn't necessarily share the suffering. It's a sort of surface reaction to the immediate circumstance. You recognize that people have a problem, but you don't necessarily share it, and you probably won't do much to alleviate their issue. Whereas empathy goes several steps beyond. Empathy enables us to understand emotions as well as practical limitations or frustrations. There's a metaphor that's very useful by Brené Brown for the difference between sympathy and empathy. You probably, if you have Netflix, you might have come across Brené Brown's, she has a show on Netflix. And she's a research professor at the University of Houston, I think. And she spent her career studying courage, vulnerability, shame, and empathy. In order to explain the difference between sympathy and empathy, she says that sympathy is when you can look at someone in a hole and say, I'm sorry you're in that hole. That sucks. So you recognize they're in a difficult situation. But empathy is like dropping a ladder, climbing down, and being in the hole with someone, but knowing that you have the ladder to get out and you put it in the hole so you can get back out together. So, example of empathy versus sympathy in real life that happened to me. I was in New York and my bank card stopped working for no apparent reason. There was cash in it, and I'll spare you the details of how fiendishly difficult it was to actually speak to a human at my bank in Spain. Although I could build a whole new talk on UX just about that. However, finally, thanks to Skype and to a lifetime of international phone call hacking experience, I managed to call my bank and tell them, I am in New York, my bank card is not working. Why? Please help. I was on Broadway, unable to pay for my coffee. And the customer services operator that she said, she got it. She said, I'm so sorry. It must be horrible. You can't pay for your coffee. Wow. Amazing. Ooh, wouldn't want to be you. But she also said she ruined it totally because she said, there is nothing I can do to help you over the phone. Please visit your branch to resolve the situation. And I don't know how I kept my cool because I thought if I lose it, not going to help. So I said, no, I can't. Please understand. I am currently in New York. I cannot visit my branch. I couldn't even get to the airport if I wanted to because my card isn't working. She just refused. She just kept saying, but I knew what had happened. I had paid for my flights and for my hotel for a week in New York with the card. Your card has a spend, at least in Europe. It has a spend limit that has nothing to do with how much cash you have in it. It could be $1 million, but if you've reached your spend limit, you need to raise it. Otherwise, you won't be able to use it. And I told her this, and she just was like, yeah, sorry. Computer says no, sorry. So she didn't help me, and I had another card on me, and I managed to, basically a friend helped me out, and I somehow, and also I have a friend in New York. Anyway, I managed to get out of it, but it was super stressful. So the real difference between sympathy and empathy is that empathy finds solutions while sympathy usually doesn't, and it can infuriate. So be careful to be not so much sympathetic, be empathetic. So life is complex, though. We must remember that empathy doesn't just mean, being nice. It goes much deeper than that. So when you're designing a website or an app, I'll show you a few ways that you can be empathic. You need to think you're my mother, basically. You have to imagine being someone who has no idea how anything works on a website. To her, it looks like this. But we can help her and make it look like this. This is one of the things that we can do with proper layout and typography and use of color and use of images and use of accessibility. We'll see that in a minute. So what can you do to be empathetic? Again, when you build something, practice blindness. Imagine being someone who is blind. Have you ever tried that? Have you ever tried to use a screen reader while wearing a blindfold? Do not cheat. Wear a blindfold when you test the accessibility of a website you designed. And did you design it well enough according to accessibility standard? Did you use the right headings, the right code, the right HTML structure so that it can be read by a braille keyboard? You should also practice being deaf. Imagine being someone who can't hear, because first of all, you would need subtitles, wouldn't you? And you might think, yeah, well, I'm not 90, but we'll see that you don't need to be 90 to need subtitles. Or another thing that is important is practice color blindness. Imagine being someone who can't see color. This looks like, ooh, brilliant. I love this website, so vibrant. But then if you can't see color, this is what it looks like. And if you gave any meaning to any of these colors, you're done for. You wouldn't know what they mean. So moreover, as I was saying, if you think that only a tiny fraction of the population has, for instance, color blindness or any other kind of problem, you're wrong, because there are many temporary disabilities that we all have to deal with on a daily basis, or things that make it difficult for us to interact with a website that's designed purely for people with no issues. So, for instance, you're temporarily deaf when you're on public transport and you've forgotten your headphones. So you're going to need captions in that case. If it's a sales video that you're promoting and I can't watch it because I haven't got my headphones or I'm on a busy train, then you're losing my sales. So that's one way that you have not designed for conversions. Adding captions is designing for conversions. Another example, a parent holding a child is temporarily disabled. They just have one arm to use. Maybe we can't use the mouse with that arm, and they would need to be able to use to navigate the website via the keyboard. So, or another example is that you're more sensitive when you're in a stressful situation. One example was me earlier trying to work out how to use Crowdcast, and I was getting stressed out because I was just about to go live, and and Crowdcast wasn't helping me out. So when you have a flat tire or a broken down car, you probably have an app for the service that you subscribe to that will help you out. So the interactions designed for that kind of circumstance should be tailored accordingly. Is the phone number visible enough? And you'd be surprised how many are not designed or written, because the UX or writing is super important as well. Another thing that I want to say about empathy is that we need to be careful anyway how we empathize, because another mistake that we make is that we think, oh yeah, I know how that feels, just because you did have a flat tire once. But we often overestimate how we empathize because we can't know exactly how someone else feels. So we naturally project our own experiences onto other people's, and that can lead to mistaken empathy, however well-meaning. So let's listen and let's accept that you may not always know. There are also people who don't use empathy because they're autistic and they don't understand what empathy is, but they still can function. So how do we empathize with them and not make them feel like they're monsters because they don't have empathy? So let's accept that we may not know, and we definitely are not be able to cover every case, but we do our best. We must remember, though, that one thing that we can do with the right kind of empathy is that we can create solutions that, besides solving a need, also empower our users' lives. And there are many examples of apps and products that do just this. But I just want to give you an example. So someone with protanopia sees shades of green. I mean, this is what I see. I see green here. To me, that's what I call green. But normally, this is what this palette looks like. Who's to say that marigold isn't a name for green? Who's to say that my truth is any more valid than the truth of someone who thinks that marigold is green or tiger's eye is darker green? So you must take into account that everybody's truth is just as valid as yours. This will lead to websites that are easier to use, more legally compliant, more accessible, and as a result, more profitable, because more people will be able to use them, and you will be a better human being. Now, the best form of empathy is informed empathy and acceptance that other people's truth is as valid as yours is. So if you take away one thing, take this away. And I remember that my father wasn't like that at all. I mean, for instance, he thought that if I went to study at the library, that meant I was skiving, because whenever he went to the library, he was skiving. I was like, no, I really go to study. It's things like this. Anyway, so this the best kind of empathy is called compassionate empathy. And that's when we feel someone's pain and we take action to help. And I want to give you a real life example, which I love. Every time I describe this, I well up a little bit. So this is what happens. This is human-centered design. This is what happens when you put the human beings that you're designing for at the center of your process. So it's a hospital in Bilbao in Spain where they substituted gurneys with electrical toy cars. This actually works for kids to be taken to the operating theater. So it's fantastic because it looks great. So it complies with all the criteria for establishing if something is good UX or not, which is look, feel, and usability. It looks great. It feels amazing for everyone, because the nurses that have to take the kids to the operating hospital suddenly don't have to deal with a bundle of fear or with a tantrum, but with a kid who's excited. And then also, so look, feel, and usability. It does comply. It does what it needs to do, which is take the kid to the operating theater. So I just absolutely love this. Now, how do you build empathy into your process? Because I still haven't told you that, and I promised I would tell you that. And like I said, it is actually much simpler than you may have thought. There's nothing particularly arcane about it. So the first step to practice empathy is to involve the users from the beginning of the process. And it's something that we need to get the clients to understand. It's not about what they like, or what they want, or what they think that the business needs. It's about what's best for their users. And I say users instead of humans because it's just easier. It's for the sake of understanding one another. And how do you do that? You start from research. So research is just essential. Again, if you leave with just one thing, make it empathy and research. So 2 things, please, because with research, you don't rely on the past or on personal preference. So you can't make the logo bigger. You can explain why you shouldn't be making the logo bigger. And you can make decisions based on what customers really need instead of what you think they need, or marketing department demands that are based maybe on old business goals, or even just habit. So, and you can do that by following a UX process that starts with research. Saying it again because it bears repeating. Follow a UX process that starts with research. Again, not that difficult, but I'll just give you a quick overview of what a UX process looks like. It starts from design thinking. I won't go into that now, but the first phase of the UX process that I use, at least mine, is research. Then after I've done enough research, I start the design process, which is first of all the structure. So we'll start from sitemap and pages, which is something that designers should talk about, because I work with agencies. I coach agencies that maybe have fantastically talented designers, but they don't have a UX lead, or they don't have an experienced lead. And one of the things that I see happen is that they do things such as they get sitemaps and lists of pages from the account holder who's spoken to the business, as to the client directly. And you need the designers in the room and the developers in the room, because when you get a sitemap, you also will find that decisions have already been made on how the navigation will have to be designed. And that's a design decision. Also, it's a content decision, and you should start with content, but let's not, I realize that I'm digressing. So design, research followed by design, followed by what I call validation, but really it's testing. But this is not a linear process. So it goes back, sorry, that's okay. That slide didn't work. Let me go. What happened here? Hang on. Sorry. That slide does work. So let me just go back to it. So we said research, followed by design, followed by validation. Okay. Yeah, I just clicked the wrong. Yeah. I was just saying that it's not linear. You go back and forth. In fact, validation, aka testing, is research, totally is research. And then you may find something that makes you go back to design, and from research back into testing, and then from design back into validation. Anyway, it's not linear. It's meant to go back and forth and be messy, just like design and life are. So I didn't invent this. I've adopted it and tweaked it to my needs. So do as much research as you can. That's what's going to make you experience a pivot in your business, if that's what you need. And research is really how you make your design human-centered. It's how you place people at the center, because you ask them questions. Okay, so it starts and it ends with research, and which plays a fundamental role in designing for conversions. By the way, those of you who are here will get a free course that is small but perfectly formed, and it really shows you, it gives you a practical example of how research will make you make design and content decisions that will improve your conversions. And it's simpler than you think, as I've been saying. There are simple ways to build research into your process. First of all, you start researching the business to find the empathy, because the business are also users. Never forget about that. So you talk to stakeholder and employee interviews. You do market research and competitive analysis. Funnily enough, I'm doing videos for Balsamic, that you may know, the wireframe tool, where I do exactly this. I show how I do all this. You can do questionnaires, surveys, workshops, and the program that I have for sale at the moment has all of these templates, and using empathic techniques and exercises. There are ways that you ask questions, there are ways that you put the questions and get the answers that are particularly empathic and that are meant to make people talk to you. Then you empathize, of course, with the users. And again, you've got user research, and you get a template for user research in the free course that you get. User interviews on a diverse user base. That's always very important. Again, questionnaires and surveys and workshops with using the same empathic techniques and exercises. The second step to practice empathy, and this, I cannot tell you how much I care about this, and I care about this more and more every day, is to build a product that's accessible from the start. And because this is what matters to all of us, let's be honest, there is a huge business case for accessibility. In the UK, we call it the purple pound. I'm sure there's even though I live in Spain now, but I work with the UK a lot. It's the spending power of disabled people. And now I'm going to give you a few figures that are going to blow your mind. So 274 billion pounds is the spending power of disabled people and their household. And it continues to increase. And it's currently estimated to be at this. And actually, these figures are from 2020. Hang on just a second. I'm going to take a sip of water. $2 billion, approximately, a month are lost by ignoring the needs of disabled people. I am not disabled, but if a video doesn't have captions, I will move on. And if a video that is not descriptive and can't have captions and only has music on it and relies only on images, I will also move on, because if I were blind, I wouldn't be able to see it. So these figures do not even include the temporarily disabled people that we are every single day of our lives. We are disabled. This is where these figures come from the website wearepurple.org.uk, because accessibility really is not as difficult as you might think. So I'm going to give you a few basic tips that you can implement straight away. Forgive me if some of you think, oh, this is totally basic, I already do it. Great. In that case, well done. But I have realized when I do the coaching with agencies that there are a few things that I would take for granted, but they're not. And it's no one's fault. It's just that it's like a few years ago. Do you remember when we had to suddenly make everything responsive? Now you wouldn't dream. You don't even discuss it. It's sort of taken for granted that a website will be responsive. I want to help pave the way for that day when accessibility will just be taken for granted in the same way that we take a responsiveness. First thing is, start from content. It means, the content first approach is essential for a huge array of reasons. Right now, we're talking about accessibility. So you need to use proper HTML hierarchy to create a logical outline. Why? Because when people who are blind listen to web pages with screen readers, but even people who are not blind, but they're driving a car and they want to get their screen reader to read out the news or whatever, or something, or a website they're navigating. Or for instance, Alexa can read the web, but without proper logical outline and proper HTML hierarchy, they're going to have a really hard time of it. Because another thing that blind people do is they extract all the headings of the page to get a sense of what the page is about. If you haven't used your semantic HTML properly, it will be a mess, and they will leave. Whatever you're selling, whatever you need, they will leave. Side effect, it's really good for SEO. So why not, really? So accessibility has very useful side effects. Remember this. The business case for it is huge. Again, another really important thing to do, which is content as well, is to use alternative text for all the images that have a meaning. Again, side effect, also great for SEO, because then all of your images become searchable. It's amazing how many people don't do this. And you don't need to describe every visual detail of an image. The really important thing is to describe the purpose of the image in the context of that specific web page. So an image that has, I don't know, children running, being happy may have, you may not need to describe that. You may have to say, oh, these children just ate my wonderful homemade cupcakes, and for that reason they're happy. And another thing that I'm sure you're already doing, but I'm telling you anyway, please always use real text. Never text on an image. And I'm saying this because sliders often, even if you think you've put text on an image, if you use sliders, which I hope you don't, the text on the slider image will be not seen as text, and that's terrible. Anyway, we'll get to sliders in a bit. Now, one thing that we've already seen is that color should never be assigned crucial meaning and never be used by itself to convey meaning. You can use it, but not as the only means of conveying meaning. I remind you of what it looks like for a colorblind person. It wouldn't make any sense at all. Then accessible typography is one of the first workshops that I'm going to do next year. So because just keep it simple first, raw, but there's a lot to say about accessible typography. First thing that I'm going to say is that if you follow basic best practice typography guidelines, you are already most of the way there with typography, I would say. I'm just going to remind you of a few things. First of all, don't be tempted by weird alignments, because centered alignment, which is the favorite one on the web, the most popular, it causes accessibility issues, because if you can't see very well, then it's not clear where the line begins. And they will tell you this. And also, a screen reader has problems. In the West, we use left alignment. Use that. I'm going to give you a visual example. So this is a website for a Dutch museum, which is an amazing museum. The website is also amazing, as much as it is infuriating. It's a display of incredible creativity and graphic design prowess, but it has lots of things that are a bit problematic. For instance, look at this. Where am I meant to look at? I mean, the eye goes all over the place, also because it's aligned relative to different boxes. So it's hard to discern where the information is. Look at this website, which is so much simpler. You know, you know exactly what to look at first, then the eye is led quite naturally. And also, even though there are no lines, the layout is super, super clear. The columns are really clearly laid out, even without any visual aid. Again, I'll show you this complete mess. When am I supposed to go? Because also they're not using any typographical hierarchy, using any bolding or size. They're not doing any of that. And I think that the color contrast also is a little bit dodgy here. I didn't check on that actually. So compare with what happens if I align everything. At least now it's much clearer. It's much easier for me to see what's going on. So this is it, like really basic. Then another thing, please don't be tempted by fancy fonts or scripts that they're very, or they have been very trendy scripts with a certain type of entrepreneur, but they cause accessibility issues on a number of levels. I'm going to give you this example where some of the letters look like another symbol, so that a double interpretation is possible. So someone who is dyslexic is going to have a really hard time with this. And that's, for instance, applies to using all caps as well, which a screen reader sees all caps as an acronym, so it will read it letter by letter. No, please don't do that. But if I am dyslexic, I find it all caps really difficult to read, and this typeface practically impossible. So this is much better, but it still has a problem because the color and background contrasts are not accessible. So don't be tempted by bright colors because they vibrate on the screen, and always use a contrast checker. Again, it's something that you may be laughing at me and saying, of course I do that. I'm not I'm not a beginner and I already do this, but, just remind you just to be on the safe side. But there's another thing that even though, and there's no time to show you this, it's something else that is in the course that is open at the moment. Another thing is that you should avoid colors that are too bright, that have 100% brightness or 100% saturation, because they vibrate a lot for me. I find it super difficult to look at this, for instance. Screen consumption needs duller colors. I mean, I could carry on for so long. Now, as I was saying, here it comes. Avoid sliders for so many reasons. Again, I'm condensing the reasons. Sliders are mostly not accessible. They're bad for SEO because you can't read the images, can't read the text, and also they go too fast. So even if the header text can be read, there's no time to read it. They slow your site down, which is bad UX because Google measures your site UX also on that. They can overwhelm the visitor. There's too much going on. And usually they're not responsive either. That won't work. I remember when I still didn't know and I used sliders, it was always a nightmare to make them responsive. And when they can't be stopped, they take away control from the user. So please don't use sliders. I mean, so many reasons. Same thing is about fancy animations. Please don't use them unless you have a very good reason. Animations are not good. They don't really help anyone. They might make the client feel happy that they have a cool website, but they have a website that may be cool, but probably it's not usable. And please avoid autoplay video at all costs. Again, I could talk a little bit about this, but just trust me, don't do autoplay video. It's something that you see video backgrounds a lot these days. Please don't. I understand why it looks attractive, but it's not going to help you. And this, no exception accepted, always add captions. Yes, even on an Instagram video, there are apps to help you. And make sure that your video and your audio are descriptive. So if there's something on a video that is only images in movement and you don't describe it, someone who is blind doesn't know what's going on. It's obvious, isn't it? And yes, I didn't think about it. And now I understand that I need to do that. So whenever there is something on the screen, you must make sure that it gets described. 2 sites that help you with captions. One is Otter, who's ridiculously otter.ai. You upload the video, it gives you a transcript, which is nearly perfect. And then it also learns your accent and the way you speak and the names that you use. So you need to do light editing, but even if you don't do any editing, it works. And rev.com is more expensive, but they give you scripts that are already edited back. Okay, because I realize that we're running short of time. So a third step to practice empathy is to use emotions. How do we do that? Well, emotions play a crucial role because they give us value and they provide a guiding system. So they go hand in hand with cognition. We see, emotion, fear tells us that we shouldn't do something. It's a safety mechanism. So they're very, very useful. And also one thing that's very important is that beauty always has a place, because usable and accessible don't have to mean ugly. There's a book on this by Don Norman, who's the granddaddy of UX. He wrote Emotional Design, Why We Love or Hate Everyday Things. And the way they look, appearance plays a big role, because he previously hadn't considered appearance, and then he realized that he really should have. And that's why fruits and flowers are so appealing in both colors and scent, so that the seeds can be spread. Or that's why some animals look so magnificent. Or that's why we look after our own experience and we place value in it, because attractive things do work better. And if you don't believe this, there's a bunch of studies that prove that. One example cited in the emotional design book is an experiment carried out in Asia, where there was an ATM that was pig ugly but had exactly the same functions as a beautified ATM, and all the testers said, or nearly all the testers said, that they found the ugly ATM difficult to use and but the functions were exactly the same, even the placement of buttons and things like that. So the pretty machine was easier to use than the other. And it doesn't surprise me so much because I find it obvious non-design things are usually not only ugly, they are often also less accessible and difficult to use. So visually displeasing things make us angry and frustrated, and these emotions make the cognitive process more difficult. So aesthetics does affect usability of things as well as their performance, also because we are wired to be more tolerant of pretty things, which is also famously why the babies of the species are often so cute, because otherwise it would be unbearable. As if you're a knitter, you know that you would kill a kitten, but you don't because it's so cute. So even if they make your knitting impossible, you don't kill them. So this is another thing that research helps with. You need to choose evocative images that fit your target audience, bearing in mind that images that don't have a purpose are often invisible, so they don't matter as much as you think, but they do matter because when they cause emotions. So this is emerging leaders internships. This image is something that you want your users to identify with. That's what research told you. This is the user that you want to reach, and this is the image that you use. And I find it really, really great. And this is a brand that's for cool people. Clearly, this is what they show. Makes sense. This is an image for the New York City Pride website. It's going to evoke the right emotions in their end user. Now, finally, we've got to the fourth step to practice empathy, and this is something else that is so often not done. And I it took me a while for me as well, which is test with real humans and test and start testing if you haven't yet. Get into the habit of testing. Funnily enough, yesterday I was in a Twitter space conversation with 3 agency owners. So at 5:30 GMT +1 every Monday, we're having this Twitter space. I'm a lurker on Twitter, but a friend of mine started that and she invited me. And yesterday, 3 agency owners were all saying the same thing. They were saying that usability testing is where it's at because it will persuade both you and any client that your users' struggles are real. It will all make sense. Take, for example, a blind person trying to use a website and saying, I want to buy this, but I'm unable to do it because of your slider. And they do a video and they show you what happens when they land on the slider. I guarantee you will never use a slider from then on. And you can show the video to your client and then suddenly will go, oh God, okay, I got it now, because it's normal. So start with usability testing, which is kind of what I already said. Usability testing checks how easy it is to use a digital product and how you need to check with people of all sorts, blind and people who just use a keyboard. Because are you sure that every website that you design can be navigated with a keyboard? Did you ever try that? I know I've failed very often, and actually even now. But anyway, so test early and frequently, because you need to validate even the idea for the product, because maybe that's not the product that they want. So you need to test that even the idea is a good idea for the product. Now, here are a few quick and dirty testing methods if you've never done it before. So low fidelity ways of testing on a shoestring. So guerrilla, which is simply you're in a cafe and you have your laptop and you ask someone who's sitting there, can you have a look at this website? What do you think it's selling? Can you tell? The 5-second method. That's already testing. Your partner, your kids, your parents are really good to test because often they're less experienced. I mean, not everybody. I mean, you know, of course, maybe your parents invented the internet, so maybe not. But in general, older people are very helpful because generally they tend to have a lower eyesight. Then your colleagues as well, your friends and their extended family. You can get so many real people to test your websites and apps and products. Facebook groups, even though I'm out of Facebook right now, but LinkedIn groups are growing. Chatbots and surveys can be very cheap ways and very hands-on. Then for bigger projects, you can use the existing client base. You can use Facebook groups. Again, you can use Twitter or LinkedIn. You can run a paid ad campaign on any of these platforms, or you can use an online service. There are loads of those. bear in mind that all the things that I told you to do, you can do even if you're a lone freelancer. You don't need to be a big agency, because Emily, I remember you saying that you were working with big companies and, you know, with huge UX projects. These are things that anybody can do. And I really insist on that. UX is not just for big budget and big companies. Anybody can do it, even if you're a lone wolf freelancer, one person agency. So you probably need different types of users. Like I said, if you want to be accessible and inclusive, the project often takes the types of users and the tools. I'm a big proponent of guerrilla testing, because sometimes it's all that you need. You don't need to go too far or reinvent the wheel. Anyway, if you have the budget, there are so many online testing tools. Not all of them are expensive. Some of them are. I'm just giving you a few here. Actually, by the way, I will then give you a PDF of the slides, so you will get these. And here are just a few. There are more. And also the course, the free course that you get has, I think it has a better list, and it has downloads as well. So you'll get them. So always bear this in mind, that whatever you do, please be inclusive. Make sure that you include as many users, type as you want. I'll give you an example that you think, oh, I know my users, I know who they are. A friend of mine who also I interviewed for this big UX program that I'm selling at the moment. You get the links. He was working with a barber who was adamant that all his users were males because he's a barber. As it turns out, when they did proper user research and they looked at their stats, they realized that so many women use the website. So many, because they were booking appointments for their partners and for their children. So don't think I'm a barber, I'm not serving women, because actually I think it was even more than 50%. So be inclusive. Talk to everybody. Or actually, being inclusive doesn't mean that you can't niche down. But let's not go into that particular rabbit hole again. And there is much more to say, a whole course of it, in fact, and I'm not here particularly to sell it. I'm just letting you know that it is there. If you're interested in these things, first of all, you get the free access to this course, and you get a discount on this big program. There's one for agencies and one for individuals. And then please connect with me. And this is it. I think I've talked long enough. Now I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to see you again, because I have no idea what's going on.
We're here. Don't worry. Oh, am I muted? I'm not muted. Okay. Yes. Thank you so much. That was so insightful. And the chat has been going on. So I just shared the links to the first, to the mini course. And I will also be sharing a link to the Blueprint Agency coaching program.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. That's something that I am so proud of and so happy that I'm doing it. And it just, when you do something and you feel really useful, it's just amazing, because I am, and also I have to say that you get a 15% discount, but right now it's still a pilot program, so it's extremely affordable, let's say, because it's a pilot program. There is no way that I would keep it at that level, because the way that the program works is that you get up to 3 seats, so 3 people can get access to this big course that's called the UX Blueprint, that has so much about all of this and a lot about the interface as well. It talks about the UX process in depth, but it also talks about design as building the structure, navigation, and information architecture, and the user interface as well, and then the validation and the UX of copy as well, because it's really important. Obviously, I'm not a copywriter, so it's more of a guidance. It's the last module, but still, if you've never considered the UX of copy and you watch that module, you are going to be in a much better place than you were before. So, but then what it includes, it's 4 sessions plus 1 welcome session where I actually coach the team. So I'm working with agencies that have incredibly talented designers, but they are not design led. And that happens with a lot of digital agencies and a lot of WordPress agencies. So they do consider design and they know the importance and so on, but their design team maybe is young, they're not led by design. And so the coaching is incredibly helpful to them because it also empowers the younger designers to go and champion their cause and say, no, we really need to do this. Or it gives them the tools to be able to go back to a client and say, look, we need to be accessible. Your site is not accessible. And this is why you should do it, because I coach them to do so. And the really interesting thing that happens is that things about the agency come up, and then I'm able to feed back to the director, for instance, or the CEO and say, look, I've noticed that this is what happens, and I think you'd find it more profitable. And actually, one thing that we're talking about a lot with all the agencies is the accessibility, and how actually things that maybe they were not offering as add-on services before, they can now add on as a service, which is obviously extra. It makes you more profitable. So again, this is how you design for conversions and you become more profitable even as an agency, because you find yourself being able to elevate your business and also being able to sell more services. But I'm going to shut up now, just in case there are questions or, anybody wants to say something.
And I want to respect your time and our viewers' time. I noticed that we're a little bit over, but that's completely fine.
Sorry.
It's totally fine. Are you able to answer a couple of questions?
Of course, with pleasure.
Okay, awesome. And a message to everyone who is with us. If you can't stick around and you have to jump off early, the recording will be available here on Crowdcast or in our Facebook group. And I'll be emailing all of the important links after the webinar, including this presentation, the coupon codes, etc. So the first question we had is, how do you think agencies can be better listeners, and what are some frameworks or strategies agencies can adopt in order to become better listeners?
Yes. So I think that the first thing is to adopt all the interviews and things such as there's something called empathy mapping, which is basically it's going way further than an interview, and making that's the first thing that you do. And even though I've had people coming back to me after the short course that you get for free, saying that course actually helped my business so much, because I really understood what you meant when you said listen to people first. So the UX process that's what it does. It gives you the framework to listen. It's not a template. I really always hesitate to call it a template because it's messy. It always changes. And why does it always change? Because users are always different. You may find that with a certain clients, they just will not let you talk to users, and you have to respect that. So you talk to them instead. So I think that the frameworks and strategies are to make it your priority, to make listening your priority, and to make asking as many questions as you possibly can your priority, and to make sure that clients understand that it's not about them, it's about the user. Because I can't speak for the lived experience of the people in the room, but my lived experience is that the client wants that to be red or the logo to be bigger because that's what they like. And they need to understand that it's not about personal preference. And this is also a way in which you empower yourself, because you learn why, and therefore you're able to go back and say, okay, I can make the logo bigger, but if I do that, then people will not see this form, which is the reason why they're on the page.
Awesome. So other than the otter.ai and rev.com, are there any tools to test accessibility features that you can recommend? For example, the ones for color blindness seem very valuable. What are ways agencies can test their website for color blindness?
So Otter and Rev are transcription services. So they're not to test accessibility. They're just where you can get your captions done for your videos. Now there's the Wave, the Web Aim accessibility plugin that you can add to your site, and it's called Wave. And I'll find the link and I'll give it to you. And it's amazing when you use it and you sort of learn how to interpret it, because you go, oh my God. And it shows you also at the website, the structure of websites. And you really, when you start using that, you really understand the difference that it makes when you use proper HTML structure, when you use a heading correctly. Then the contrastchecker.com is one of the simplest tool. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Thank you, Emily.
Thanks,
That's the
Emily.
link. Then for color, I love coolers.co. I'm gonna put it, which you saw, because it's not just a palette tool. It's a tool that helps you create really accessible palettes. Again, how to do that is in the course.
Okay, awesome. So no more secrets spilled.
Yeah. Why doesn't? Yeah, that's weird. That's really strange.
It
Karen.
was working for me just a moment ago. We are purple.
We are purple. I'll do a quick search. .org.uk. That's strange though, because I actually copied their URL, but I must have made a mistake. Anyway, we've got the right one here. Sorry, Karen. Here we are. This is such a useful.
.uk.
Or org.uk. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, org.uk. That's or not. Anyway, never mind. Sorry, that's not. So yeah, Coolers is a really good website. Then there are there's one that I use, but it's not a web app. It's called Sim Daltonism, which is for Mac. Sim Daltonism. It will simulate color blindness on your screen, but there are lots of. Yeah. Hi, David. And you were saying, I saw your question, David. You were saying if you can spread the links. Yes, you can. There's a time limit on them, like on the discounts. The cards are open for a while longer, because I've been incredibly busy, so I haven't been able to do that much selling. So the cards are open, but the discounts are not forever. So that's the only thing. If you want the discounts, then you need to act soonish. And also the same thing for the free course link that will expire, I think, in a month. So I think it's quite generous. Yeah, no problem, David. I'm
awesome.
Really happy to do that.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing these valuable courses with us in our audience. We really appreciate it. Just a couple more questions on the roster. So if let's say you're a micro agency, so someone with a 1 to 2 person team, what's the most efficient and effective way to practice human-centered design?
So that's me. That's how I started it, because like Emily, I had the experience of UX in a really big organization. And I was like, God, I don't have a research department. And so that's exactly why I decided to share all that I developed. And basically, my process always starts from market research, competitive analysis. And like I said, I'm doing videos for Balsamic on the whole process with this Italian museum that I'm leading the UX for. And so I start from that. I start from researching the market. And then I start from researching the client themselves, talking a lot to them, asking lots and lots of questions. Again, the course has loads of templates and real life interviews, hours and hours of them. So maybe boring to watch, but they're there. And then user interviews. But to do the user interviews and creating user personas, which you have a template in the free course, you often have to start from the stakeholders, because sometimes they won't have users, or sometimes they will not want that you talk to the users. So you ask the stakeholders, because on so many occasions, the stakeholder is actually the person who started the company is actually a user. Airbnb is a case in hand. They started because they were users and they knew the problem intimately because they had it. So it's good enough, and then when there's time, I dig further into the user persona with empathy mapping. But to be honest, it really depends on the budget. It really depends on what you're doing. We're not doing empathy mapping with the Italian Museum because they are on the ground so much that I feel that the various needs that we identified, obviously, until we do the website, we will not know, which is why you need to test. And the testing thing is another crucial way in which you put your customer at the center. And that's something that was new to me. I didn't used to do it. I found it really scary, but it is essential. And again, you can do it even if you're really small, because I'm telling you about the Italian Museum now. The Italian Museum has a team, but I've done all this with really tiny clients. And again, tailoring the situation to them. But the guerrilla testing techniques that I just talked about, that's testing. And you don't need a sample of 1,000 people to test. You can test. Issues will come up with 3 people. It just, you don't really need that many more. That's it. That's, in a really very quickly said how to do that, how to start doing that, how to put people at the center.
Awesome. That's
Emily.
Great advice. So if agencies could prioritize just one thing, either user research, accessibility, or testing, etc., for human-centered design, which would you recommend?
I would, if it were just one thing, I would say go with accessibility. I think research, you can't not do it. I mean, it's not something, it's like, do you brush your teeth in the morning? You have to do it. Basically, we're at that stage. But the reality of it, we have to, and I mean, everybody does research to an extent. You do it more with this method, but really, who doesn't give the clients a questionnaire? Everybody does it. But accessibility is a harder nut to crack because so many people just don't think about it yet. And it's amazing how big organizations, I mean, one of the agencies that coaching, they have big clients that have websites that are completely not accessible because they were not built with that first. And another recommendation that I would make to agencies is be design led, because if you get the designers in the room, make sure that your designers are trained and educated. I don't care if you don't use my trainings on me, go to someone else that you like better. I don't care, but keep your designers trained, empower them, get them in the room. You can't decide on a sitemap with the main stakeholder and the account manager. You can't do that. You need to have the designers and developers in the room. My course, a lot of developers, they're taking it because it's the same issues. We have exactly the same thing. Maybe because even the UI, it matters to the back end. It totally matters. And then if you are a design-led agency, you ultimately will be a more profitable agency because you will automatically and sort of organically add more services to what you do. And I mean, also, I'm quite fired up because I just had a meeting with a commercial director of one of the agencies that I'm coaching, and she was really happy about lots of things that are coming up, and she's now able to both, see potential, identify potential issues, and go back to clients saying, "I've got this extra service for you." So it's great, it's what they call a win-win, I believe.
Yes, a win-win situation. That's awesome. We have a question from Jay on Facebook, and he asked, do you also offer guidance and best practices for remediation when a client is already in a huge accessibility mess?
Short answer, no, because I'm not sure what they're talking about. If Jay, are you talking about already legal issues? Because if that's the case, then absolutely not. I wouldn't know where to start from. But guidance on how to improve the accessibility of a site, yes, I would. The thing is that also don't make me say that I am an accessibility expert because I don't have any qualifications. I can't say that. I cannot, in all honesty, say that. I do know a lot about accessible UI, and I am getting those qualifications, but you know, that it's a whole profession into itself. And you can be an accessible designer, and I would recommend that you hire that you train your designers to be accessible designers and your developers to be accessible developers. Anyway, Jay, sorry, no, I would be able to offer guidance on accessibility, but I wouldn't be able to help with remediation.
Okay, and our last question is the use of emojis accessible? Would you say so? Where's the state on that?
That is such a good question, because I was at WordCamp Sevilla, just got back yesterday, and we talked about that with friends who are accessibility nuts. And basically, not really. You can use one, because one gives a giggle, because when the screen reader reads out an emoji, it reads out the description. Mm-hmm. So it's like starry-eyed face. So you use it once, but if you use it 3 times, if it's 3 rolling on the floor laughing emojis, the screen reader will read it 3 times. And if it's like a string of 15 emojis, the screen reader will read every single one. So no, but if you use one, and it's a little bit like sliders. I mean, you use sliders because you can't decide on an image, or you can't decide on a message. Mm-hmm. Decide what the main thing is. I do that. I do a laughing face together with a crying face, you know, crying your eyes out face.
Up, muscle. All of them.
You know, all of them. And but it's not accessible. 1 is fine. And I actually talked to a blind person yesterday who said 1 makes me giggle, but 5, I want to throttle you. No, please don't.
It becomes a frustration.
It becomes a frustration. I mean, can you imagine? The screen reader has to read it out.
You're just like, I need to get on with the art. Okay. Oh, wow. So practicing compassion and empathy in live time, in real time. Well, thank you so much for answering your question. Oh, Emily says, I love that, Pearl. Decide on your message and let that guide you. Do we really need several emojis? Probably not. And that's,
just decide one. What's the message? It's like when you land on a website, you have to decide, what do I want the user to do? One thing, not a million. So that's the same thing, really. I am so sorry that it took much longer than I thought, but we had a little hiccup as well.
Yeah, we did, and thank you for serving so much grace and all of the little bumps on the road, and for everyone who is attending, thank you for being so graceful with your time. We really appreciate it, and thank you so much for joining in. We'll see you next time. Piccia, thank you so much. This was so valuable. Thank you. So insightful.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for your patience with the hiccups. Thank you to everyone who was here.
Awesome. And I look forward to the next one. Have a great rest of your day, and see you online, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.